The search continues for a former Grand Valley State University.
Colin Finnerty hasn't been seen in a couple days.
Dozens of people and also canine units have just been scouring this area looking for any
He was last seen about 8:30 that night.
Search is going on right now, but the weather is hampering the
Finnerty was not familiar with the area.
Still unclear what may have happened. Anything is possible.
So far, though, search crews have found nothing.
Welcome back to A Universe of Mystery. Today, we'll dive into a story of triumph, tragedy, and the enduring mystery of a man named Colin Finnerty. Colin was an extraordinary individual, known widely for his prowess on the football field, but today we dive deeper, beyond the accolades, into the heart of his life's journey. Colin Finnerty was born on August 18, 1982 in Brighton, Michigan. His early life was marked by an unwavering commitment to football. At Brighton High School, he started making a name for himself, winning the Livingston County Football Player of the Year award as a senior and being named to the Ann Arbor News All-Area First Team. Even then, his talent was indisputable. After redshirting his first year at the University of Toledo, Colin transferred to Grand Valley State University, where he would become a football legend. It was at Grand Valley State that Colin had led his team to win the NCAA Division II football championships in 2003, 2005, and 2006, becoming one of the most successful quarterbacks in college football history. Each game, each season, further solidified his place in the NCAA Division II history.
On Memorial Day weekend, we always go to Baldwin, which is where my parents have a cabin. And it's just a time to relax, spend time with my side of the family.
In the weeks leading up to their trip, Finnerty complained of headaches and restless sleep. He was using oxycodone for his back pain. On Sunday, May 26, 2013, he asked his wife to drop him off at Bray Creek State Forest Campground for a solo fishing trip. 35 minutes later, at dusk, he called his wife in a panic.
He was disoriented. He didn't know where he was in the woods. He was afraid. I just knew when I spoke with him that something wasn't right.
Colin Finnerty said he ran into two men on Baldwin River. He thought they might be following him. He was lost, scared, and confused.
So we looked in the woods all evening. It was getting, darker fast. And so I called the police to see if they could help us find him.
At 9:36 p.m., Finnerty made another call that lasted just 20 seconds. He told his brother-in-law, "I don't know where I am." By Monday morning, helicopters hovered above the 16 square miles of forest. Search and rescue dogs searched the brush.
We went over to the campground where he went missing. We fully expected Colin to show up. He was tough. He could take care of himself, even in the woods.
All of us had our own idea of what he might have done. Maybe he took off and he was hiding, or he was lost and didn't know where he was.
Another night passed with no sign of Finnerty. Grand Valley State University sent a busload of coaches, players, and staff to look for Finnerty. By then, nearly 40 officers and hundreds of volunteers were scouring the woods. After 24 hours, Colin's friends, family, and searchers became concerned for his safety. While searching the forest, Colin's friend Kurt Ains, another former GVSU quarterback, and his wife came to a clearing, where Kurt's wife yelled, "Oh my God, I think I found him." The location confused Kurt because of how close the road was to his final location. It was so close he could hear the traffic. This was also only about 4/10 of a mile from where he made his final phone call. He was found face down, still wearing his waders and his fishing vest. Everyone was in disbelief. Police ruled out foul play. The initial autopsy was unable to determine the cause of death. In search of an explanation, the Finnerty family looked back to his past. Finnerty's brain was sent to Boston University to determine whether he suffered from CTE, or chronic traumatic encephalopathy, a degenerative brain disease caused by repeated head trauma, common in football players. When the results came in, it was found that Finnerty was a stage 2 out of 4 for CTE, so he had the disease for a few years. The disease advanced in his brain even after he had stopped playing. However, family and friends dispute the idea that his brain was damaged or that he had any kind of dementia. No one saw any signs of that, but experts agree that CTE doesn't start with just one hit to the head. However, Finnerty only had one diagnosed concussion in his career. Although it's impossible to connect having stage 2 CTE to the series of circumstances surrounding his death, doctors agree it may have played a role. An updated autopsy determined that Finnerty died from pneumonia and inhaled his own vomit after he became disoriented. Cullen Finnerty's story is one of triumph, resilience, and an indomitable spirit. A man who rose from a small town in Michigan to the heights of college football, leaving an indelible mark on everyone who knew him, watched him, and cheered for him. But Cullen's story is also a reminder of the very human cost of the sports we love, the hidden struggles that often go unnoticed until it's too late. His untimely death sent shockwaves through the world of football and beyond, prompting a deeper examination of the sport's impact on its players. His legacy, however, lives on. Every pass thrown on the football fields of Grand Valley State University echoes with the memory of Cullen's powerful arm. Every victory achieved carries the spirit of the winningest quarterback in NCAA history. The echoes of his name, the memories of his achievements, and the lessons from his life continue to inspire future generations of athletes. His family, his friends, his fans, they remember him not for just the records he set or the games he won, but for the man he was. A devoted son, a loving husband, a fantastic father, a loyal friend. Cullen's wife, Jennifer, and their 2 children lost more than a football legend. They lost a loving husband and father. His parents, Tim and Maureen, lost their son. But in their loss, they have found the strength and the love and support of the community, the fans, and all who knew and admired Cullen. In the face of their grief, they have chosen to honor Cullen's memory by raising awareness about CTE and the risk associated with contact sports. Their courage serves as a beacon for other families navigating similar tragedies. In the vast wilderness of Idaho, a man and his loyal dog set out on a scouting trip, only to vanish without a trace. Despite extensive searches, no sign of them was found. Then, 10 years later, a shocking discovery reignites the mystery. What happened to Todd Hoflander and his black Labrador, Ruby? Was it a tragic accident, foul play, or something even more inexplicable? Join us as we delve into the twists and turns of this haunting case, uncovering new evidence, exploring psychic predictions, and asking the hard questions that still remain. This is a story of friendship, mystery, and a decade-long search for the truth. So buckle up, because this is a journey you don't want to miss. In the late summer of 2010, specifically on September 24th, Todd Hoflander, a man of 39 years old, along with his companion Jeff, set off on an adventure to the Seven Devils Wilderness, a rugged and untamed region in Idaho. Their mission was to survey the land in anticipation for the forthcoming deer season. Todd's loyal black Labrador retriever, Ruby, was also part of this expedition. Over the course of the weekend, the duo established a campsite in the wilderness and undertook exploratory hikes between Sheep's Creek Basin and McGaffrey Basin. On the morning of the 27th, while traversing the area known as McGaffrey Cow Camp, Todd started to feel a sharp pain in his knee, a consequence of a strenuous hike. This led to a change in their original plan, with Todd and Ruby opting for a less challenging trail down the Snake River in the McGaffrey cabin, while Jeff continued his journey towards Sheep Creek before descending into the river. The revised plan was for Todd to rest at McGaffrey cabin while Jeff arranged for a boat to pick him up at the Snake River. Jeff journeyed north along the ridge until he reached the Sheep's Creek and then made his way to the junction where Sheep's Creek meets the Snake River. There, he was able to flag down a passing jet boat and hitch a ride to Pittsburgh Landing. At Pittsburgh Landing, Jeff rendezvoused with his father, Steve, and together they navigated down the river in Steve's jet boat. They reached McGaffrey cabin later in that afternoon, but were taken back to find that Todd was missing. In a bid to find Todd, Jeff and Steve retraced the trail from the cabin. Despite their best efforts, they were unable to locate Todd. As night fell, they were forced to halt their search due to the enveloping darkness. They returned to McGaffrey cabin and spent the night there, hoping to resume their search at first light. On the morning of September 28th, Jeff and Steve embarked on a boat search, scanning the area between McGaffrey cabin and Sheep Creek. They meticulously surveyed the shoreline, hoping to catch a glimpse of Todd in case he had emerged from one of the other drainages that fed into the Snake River. Their search continued until noon, when they decided to return to Riggins and seek additional help from the sheriff's office. The sheriff's office promptly launched a search and rescue operation that very afternoon. A helicopter was dispatched to survey the creeks and drainages where Todd was suspected to be. Additionally, 3 more search teams, equipped with horses and mules, were assembled and ready for deployment to the Windy Saddle area at dawn the next day. The U.S. Air Force was also contacted to conduct an aerial survey of the area using flare technology to cover as much ground as possible. The initial search reports highlighted the extreme ruggedness of the Seven Devils Wilderness, with elevations varying from 1,275 feet at the Snake River to 7,600 feet at the Windy Saddle Trailhead. The terrain was described as exceedingly steep, featuring cliffs along the riverfront, with precipitous drops of up to 1,800 feet. The vegetation in the area was diverse, ranging from dense brush and a thick canopy at the river level to steep and rocky ledges at higher elevations. The weather was relatively moderate for that time of year, with nighttime lows in the 50s and daytime highs reaching the mid-80s. Despite the presence of numerous hiking trails in the vicinity, the foot traffic was minimal during the transitional period between the end of the summer and the beginning of the deer season. On the morning of the 29th, search teams began their initial search from the Windy Saddle Trailhead, moving towards the McGaffey Basin. The area between McGaffey Basin and Sheep Creek was also meticulously scanned, with the aid of flare technology. In the afternoon, a dog team joined the search, using scent articles belonging to Todd to track his possible trail. The dog team, equipped with a handheld thermographic device, continued their search throughout the night. Simultaneously, Todd's companions, Steve and Jeff, persisted in their river search using their boat. Despite the exhaustive efforts of all the search teams, no trace of Todd was found. On October 6th, a man named Tom Lindsay approached the sheriff's deputies, claiming to have had contact with the sheriff's office during the search. Mr. Lindsay asserted that his dowsing rods had indicated that Todd was near Bernard Creek, a creek that runs parallel to the trail Todd was expected to be on. According to Mr. Lindsay, Todd would be found in the first draw on the right when looking up at Bernard Creek from the Snake River. He also stated that Todd was still alive. However, it appears that deputies did not attach much significance to this lead, leaving the mystery of Todd's whereabouts unsolved. On the 8th of October, the sheriff's office was alerted to a grim discovery. A dog's carcass was found floating in the Snakes River the previous Saturday. The dog had been skinned, and although photographs were taken by the person who reported the find, it was unclear if the dog was Ruby, Todd's faithful companion. On October 9th, Jeff was brought into the Riggins Sheriff's office for an interview and a polygraph test. The objective of this session was to piece together a timeline of events leading up to Todd's disappearance. Jeff had taken photos during their scouting trip, which served as proof that Todd was alive and well in the days before he vanished. In an interview, Jeff was subject to a polygraph test. Following the test, a discussion ensued between deputies, the examiner, and Jeff regarding the results. It appeared that Jeff had failed the test, indicating possible deception. Jeff was questioned about any undisclosed information that might have influenced the test results. Despite this, Jeff insisted he was being truthful. Jeff suggested that the polygraph machine might be faulty and asserted that the photos on his camera would corroborate his story. During the interrogation, Jeff revealed new information, including the fact that Todd was carrying a custom .44 Magnum revolver in a shoulder holster. The revolver had been a possession of Todd's late father, a former member of the California Highway Patrol. Jeff stated that Todd had the gun with him when they parted ways, and he categorically denied any involvement in Todd's disappearance, asserting that he did not harm Todd or cover up or do any wrongdoing. In the middle of the interview, Jeff's father abruptly entered the room and demanded that Jeff leave, effectively ending the interview. On October 13th, a comprehensive interview was conducted with Todd's wife, Julie. While the interview shed light on many aspects of Todd's life, it revealed little about the circumstances of his disappearance. However, some intriguing statements were made about Todd's relationship with Steve and Jeff. Julie mentioned that Todd would sometimes feel hurt by Steve and Jeff, who would invite him on fishing trips only to cancel or change the plans at the last minute. They would also call Todd unexpectedly and describe the enjoyable trip that they were having, even though he wasn't invited. Julie also alleged that Jeff occasionally made her feel uneasy with his gaze. Moreover, she stated that Jeff viewed dogs as mere tools and would sometimes mistreat his own dog. If these allegations were true, they would cast a negative light on Jeff's character. On October 15th, a group of hikers who were driving along Seven Devils Road stopped for lunch near mile marker 15. During their meal, they noticed a black Labrador retriever descending a hill, appearing restless and making whining and growling noises. Aware of Todd's disappearance and his black Labrador companion, the hikers tried to lure the dog closer with food. They noticed that the dog seemed excited when they mentioned the name Ruby or Todd. Believing that they might have found Todd's dog, they spent some time calling Todd's name and searching the area, but to no avail. They then contacted the sheriff's office to report their discovery and drove the dog into Riggins to meet with the deputies. Sheriff's deputies examined the black Labrador and observed that the dog appeared to be in good health, with a shiny coat and no visible injuries. Interestingly, the dog was not wearing a collar or a pack, which was unusual since Ruby had been wearing a collar and a blue doggy pack when Todd and the dog disappeared. Julie Hoflander had been informed and was waiting nearby with her 2 children to identify the dog. When deputies brought the dog close to the family, they started calling Ruby's name. The dog immediately ran straight to them, confirming that the Labrador Retriever was indeed Ruby, alive and well. Hoping that Ruby would lead them to Todd, search teams took her back to the location where she was found the next day. However, their efforts were in vain. On October 19th, deputies met with Todd's wife Julie and informed her about where Ruby had been discovered. They discussed plans for possibly searching the following 2 days to cover that specific area. Julie requested that deputies speak to a psychic detective from California, whom she had paid $500 for information. The deputies then had a conversation with this psychic, who claimed that Todd harbored significant inner anger and owed a substantial debt. According to her, Jeff mistakenly shot and killed Todd while hunting, and Jeff subsequently buried him. The psychic detective also stated that she had used dowsing on the map to determine the burial site, pinpointing the area around the Indian Trail Ridge. The search for Todd continued intermittently for a total of 18 days. During this time, searchers covered nearly every possible area within the vicinity of Todd's disappearance. On certain days, up to 7 dog teams were simultaneously involved in the search, with some teams persisting until the dogs were physically unable to continue. However, despite the exhaustive efforts and the involvement of numerous searchers, the search yielded no significant clues indicating Todd's whereabouts. On the 15th of October, the only tangible lead related to Todd's disappearance surfaced. His dog was found, despite the area where the dog was discovered having been thoroughly searched by both human and canine teams, and having been flown over multiple times by aircraft. No further evidence was unearthed. The extensive search operation garnered considerable public attention, with numerous hunters volunteering their assistance. However, with the onset of unfavorable weather conditions, the search operation was reluctantly called off on October 21st. At this juncture, no significant leads had emerged regarding Todd's whereabouts. Nearly a decade would elapse before any new development surfaced in Todd's case. Fast forward to April 27, 2020. A hunter in the Bernard Creek area stumbled upon what seemed to be human remains, along with backpacking gear and a camera. The hunter retrieved the camera and delivered it to the Idaho County Sheriff's Office for examination. Upon inspecting the SD card of the camera, the sheriff discovered pictures of Todd. Consequently, a team of deputies was transported by boat to the area to recover the remains. They found the bones and gear approximately 200 foot away, on the opposite side of the Bernard Creek from the trail that Todd had been expected to follow. Deputies noted that the backpack and other items matched the description of those known to be carried by Todd. However, only a partial skeleton was recovered. The remains discovered included fragments of the cranium, ribs, scapula, and part of the humerus. The area where they were found is heavily blanketed in brush, making it challenging to set up camp or be spotted by helicopters from above. Video footage and photographs taken by the Idaho County Sheriff's deputies provide a vivid depiction of the location and conditions of the items. Deputies conducted thorough searches in all directions for additional clues, but found nothing of significance. Notably absent from the site were Todd's boots and firearm, which would be highly unlikely to completely decay over the previous 10 years. Although pictures were retrieved from the camera's SD card, none of them depicted Todd on the hunting trip because the card had already reached its storage capacity. Todd's wife confirmed that the assorted items belonged to him when they were shown to her. The coroner eventually used comparative DNA analysis on the bone fragments to confirm they belonged to Todd. However, an official ruling on the cause of death remains elusive due to lack of evidence, making the exact circumstances of Todd Hoflander's disappearance and death a complete mystery. The case stands out due to the presence of clues pointing out in various directions, similar to other cases involving hunters like Heron Hedges. The information regarding Todd's movement prior to his disappearance heavily relies on the account provided by his hunting companion, Jeff. While Jeff assisted in the search for Todd, his credibility came into question, given the description of his relationship with Todd provided by his wife, Julie, which does not resemble a friendship. Jeff's failure in the polygraph test can also be viewed with suspicion depending on one's belief in the accuracy of these tests. The search for Todd Hoflander appears to have been extensive, with logs confirming aerial coverage of Bernard Creek using helicopters. However, the thick canopy would have hindered Todd from being spotted if he was present there. FLIR technology should have had a good chance of detecting him if he was still alive and emitting heat. Ground search maps indicated that portions of Bernard Creek were covered, but not the specific area where Todd was eventually found. Despite numerous dogs teams involved in the search, they did not pick up on Todd's location. While search dogs vary in effectiveness, it is surprising that none of the trained teams detected his presence, considering that some were trained to detect both live and deceased scents. Regarding psychic predictions in missing person cases, there are two notable instances in this case. The psychic detective hired by Todd's wife, Julie, claimed that Todd was accidentally killed and buried in the area of Indian Trail Ridge, which is not near the location where Todd's remains were actually found. The other individual, who was not specifically referred to as a psychic but employed dowsing rods, stated that Todd would be found in the first draw to the right when looking up Bernard Creek from the Snake River section, called PB38. Interestingly, this prediction aligns more closely with Todd's actual discovery site, located at the bottom of Section 21, practically on the boundary of what is Section PB38. It could be argued that since the dowser believed Todd was alive, his remains might have slightly downstream from the initial location. The interpretation of these predictions as mere chance or something more is left to your individual judgment. What do you think happened? Leave it in the comments below. Regardless of the circumstances, it is unfortunate that the lead regarding the psychic prediction was not thoroughly investigated by the sheriff's office. There is no indication in the available reports that this lead was acted upon. The discovery location of Todd's remains only deepens the mystery surrounding his disappearance. Why was he found 200 feet away from the trail on the opposite side of the Bernard Creek? Did Todd's knee worsen, forcing him to set up camp near a water source? If he was still alive when the search began a day later, why didn't he not return to the trail or hear the search parties looking for him? Remarkably, Todd's clothing and gear were in relatively good condition, even after being discovered 10 years later. There are no signs of animal attacks on the clothing, ruling out predation. Todd's holster was found among his belongings, but the fate of his revolver remains unknown. The only missing items were the revolver and his boots. What happened to these items? It is understandable that many may consider the possibility of foul play in this case, which is a valid theory. Others may contemplate paranormal possibilities, which cannot be entirely dismissed. The discovery of Todd after 10 years likely provided some closure to his family, but it also left behind a lingering mystery. Like many other missing person cases, this one raises more questions than answers. If you've enjoyed this content from a universe of mystery, and you enjoy me telling you these mysterious stories, please consider subscribing, sharing, and hitting that notification bell. It really helps the channel out.
In southeastern Arizona, nestled amongst the remote Chiricahua Mountains, lies a vast and rugged expanse of land known as the Chiricahua National Monument. This area is characterized by steep gullies, canyons, jagged rocks, and massive boulders balancing atop each other, creating a landscape that resembles the moonscape of some alien world. Despite its otherworldly appearance, the Chiricahua National Monument is part of a national park system. It holds a place on the National Register of Historic Places and is renowned for its natural beauty and unique rock formations. Visitors to this area can experience the wild and often lethal beauty of this land by hiking its scenic trails. However, the Chiricahua National Monument is also known for one of the most puzzling unsolved national park disappearances on record. The disappearance in question involves Paul Fugate, who at the time was a 41-year-old law enforcement ranger working for the National Park Service and stationed at the Chiricahua National Monument. Fugate was known for his enthusiasm as a ranger, his love for adventure, and his experience as a hiker. He was also highly knowledgeable of the region's terrain and geology. On January 13, 1980, a Sunday afternoon, Fugate told a seasonal staff member working with him at the Park Visitor Center that he was going to check the trail leading to a new 400-acre parcel of land acquired by the park called Fairway Ranch. After telling the staff member to close down without him if he wasn't back by 4:30 p.m., Paul Fugate, a seasoned park ranger, set out on the well-marked trail to the Fairway Ranch in his full ranger uniform and badge. It was supposed to be a quick hike, and Fugate didn't even bother to take his radio with him. He waved goodbye and casually walked out of sight. He then seemingly disappeared off the face of the earth. This would be the last confirmed time anyone would see him. When Fugate failed to return on time, a search was launched that involved tracking dogs, aircraft, and hundreds of law enforcement personnel from various agencies, including the National Park Service, the local Sheriff's Department, the Bureau of Land Management, the U.S. Forest Service, and the Southern Arizona Search and Rescue Association. Family members and volunteers also joined in on the search, starting with the trail to Fairway Ranch, where no trace of Fugate could be found, despite the search expanding to cover 17 square miles of rough and rugged terrain. Law enforcement authorities became increasingly desperate to locate Fugate and posted a $5,000 reward, which quickly ballooned to $20,000. However, none of this produced any leads. The only clue that seemed promising was from a witness who, under hypnosis, claimed to have seen Fugate unconscious in a truck between two unidentified men. There was absolutely no corroborating evidence to support this, and the witness himself admitted he could have been mistaken. The vehicle was traveling very fast, and ultimately, this lead led nowhere. Although it was widely assumed that Fugate had met with foul play, there was no concrete evidence to support this theory also. As the search for Fugate continued, various theories circulated about his disappearance. The most popular theory suggested that Fugate had stumbled upon drug dealers in the area and was either kidnapped or murdered, but once again, there was no evidence to support this. Another theory suggested that Fugate may have been attacked by a wild animal or had suffered an injury from falling, but considering his experience as a ranger, it was considered unlikely. Another possible theory was that Fugate intentionally disappeared. One clue that supported this theory was his instruction to the visitor center staff to close the center if he had not returned by 4:30 p.m., suggesting that he knew he might not be back. However, Fugate's family has challenged the theory that he abandoned his post, as he had left all his money and belongings at his home, as well as an expensive car he had been restoring and his beloved camera equipment.
Paul and Dodie's longtime friend Barbara Elfbrand admits the mystery is often on her mind.
I don't have the belief that I did originally that it would be solved. All the good clues or breakthroughs have led to walls which they couldn't get through. I know that Paul didn't just leave on his own, and I would like to know what happened to him, and it would be closure, it would be peace.
Fugate's disappearance is still one of the most puzzling unsolved national parks vanishings on record. In 1986, the National Park Service officially declared Fugate deceased, despite having no conclusive evidence of his death. There have been criticisms of the authorities' handling of the case, including accusations that they did not take appropriate measures, such as extending the search area beyond the parkland, and that the FBI did not take the case seriously enough and tried to dismiss it. Despite the lack of evidence, rumors and theories about Fugate's disappearance have continued to circulate. Some have speculated that he stumbled upon drug dealers in the area and was killed or kidnapped, while others have suggested that he may have been attacked by a wild animal or intentionally disappeared. While there is no concrete evidence to support any of these theories, the mystery surrounding Fugate's disappearance has yet to be fully resolved. In June of 2018, the National Park Service made a surprising move by reopening the decades-old case of Paul Fugate's disappearance. This announcement was made suddenly and without explanation, but it came with a substantial increase in the reward for information, which now stands at $60,000. The National Park Service cited the discovery of new evidence as the reason for this decision, although no specifics were given. The sudden reopening of the case has raised questions and speculation about what this new evidence could be and whether it is significant enough to bring the case to a close. When the National Park Service was asked about the new evidence, they replied with, quote, "We have no new information and respectfully decline to interview at this time." The fact that Fugate's case was reopened after so many years is unusual, and it suggests that authorities have reason to believe that they may finally be able to solve this mystery. However, whether this means that they are close to finding Fugate or discovering what happened to him remains to be seen. The circumstances surrounding his disappearance are murky and riddled with theories, rumors, and speculation. The lack of evidence or leads has made it challenging for investigators to determine what really happened to Fugate. What makes this case particularly strange is that most National Park Service rangers who have gone missing have been found, or at least some trace of them have been discovered. However, in Fugate's case, there is no concrete evidence to indicate what might have happened to him. Despite the renewed interest in the effort to solve this case, it seems that the disappearance of Paul Fugate remained a baffling mystery, at least for the time being.
Paddy, also known as Patricia Krieger, was a 65-year-old woman who went hiking with her boyfriend, Larry Presley, her dog, and 5 other individuals who were friends and family of Larry's. They were in the Sauk Mountain area of Washington state on October 2, 2010, to scatter Larry's parents' ashes at the top of the trail. While hiking back down, Paddy became separated from the group and started walking down the wrong trail. Although the group called out to her, she did not respond and continued walking. The group did not follow her, assuming they would meet back up at the bottom of the trail. When the group reached the end of the hike, they realized that Paddy had not yet arrived. They waited for an unknown period of time before deciding to head off. Some of the hikers went to a nearby gas station, while others went shopping. The group estimated that Paddy was left alone for around 4 hours. When they returned to the park and realized that Paddy had still not shown up, they immediately notified the authorities. Unfortunately, despite extensive search efforts by the authorities and volunteers, Paddy was never found. Her disappearance remains a mystery. The group Paddy was hiking with claimed to be her family, which initially left her actual family unaware of her disappearance. It wasn't until a week later when her employer contacted her son because she hadn't shown up for work that they learned Paddy was missing. Her dog, Bear, was found 3 weeks later, several miles from where she was last seen. Although malnourished, the dog was alive, indicating that it had been on the mountain since Paddy had gone missing. Despite being physically fit, Paddy was not an experienced hiker and was not dressed appropriately for the cold weather. When she was reported missing, law enforcement brought in scent dogs to track her movements. The dogs led investigators down the trail to the parking lot, suggesting that something might have happened to her once she had returned there. However, after finding Bear, the investigators re-evaluated this theory. According to Paddy's friends and family, Larry Presley was found with her keys and driver's license after she vanished. One of his friends was also in possession of her mobile phone. Additionally, when Paddy's family went to her house, they found a suitcase filled with jewelry in the back of a truck. When they finally entered the home, which required obtaining a court order because Larry was still living there with his friends, they discovered that it had been completely ransacked and trashed. Paddy's safe had been rifled through, and there was garbage all over the floor. Her safety deposit box had also been emptied. In addition to the other suspicious circumstances surrounding Paddy's disappearance, Larry and his friends were reportedly seen driving her vehicles after she went missing. The circumstances surrounding how Larry and Paddy met were also strange. Larry had a lengthy criminal record, and upon his release from prison, he appeared at Paddy's doorstep claiming to be a friend of her late husband, Jason Graham. Larry told Paddy that Jason had asked him to take care of her if anything happened to him. Jason was a real estate agent, and it's unclear how he and Larry could have become acquainted. Paddy's family believes that Larry may have read Jason's obituary in the newspaper and targeted Paddy for personal gain. At the time Larry and Paddy met, she was doing quite well for herself, owning her own home and several vehicles. Shortly after Larry moved in with her, several of his friends also moved in. Paddy's friends and family reported that their relationship was rocky, and several red flags appeared throughout their time together. For example, she once found drugs hidden behind a fake wall in her shed. She also discovered a gun in the saddlebag of Larry's motorcycle and found out that he was having affairs with other women. According to Paddy's family, they believed she was too afraid to end her relationship with Larry, who reportedly refused to help search for his missing partner after she vanished. Despite a search effort that included the use of thermal cameras and a helicopter, no sign of Paddy was ever found. Her family suspects Larry may have played a role in her disappearance. In 2013, Larry was arrested and charged with federal weapons violations, and he received a 10-year prison sentence. However, he was released in 2018. Despite this, there has been no significant progress in the investigation into Paddy's disappearance, which remains unsolved. The last sighting of Paddy was in the Sauk Mountain area of Washington state on October 2, 2010, wearing a long-sleeve white top under a blue short-sleeve top, a black sweatshirt, and blue jeans. The disappearance of Paddy Haskell in 2010 remains a mystery to this day, despite extensive search efforts and ongoing investigation. Her family suspects foul play, particularly involving her boyfriend at the time, Larry Presley, who had a criminal history and a suspicious relationship with Paddy. Despite his refusal to help search for Paddy and numerous red flags in their relationship, Larry was not charged in connection to her disappearance. Instead, he was later arrested on unrelated federal weapons charges and served time behind bars. Paddy's family continues to hold out hope for answers, and her case serves as a reminder of the importance of staying vigilant and cautious in relationships, particularly with those who may have questionable pasts.
The Great Smoky Mountains National Park, located in the heart of the Appalachian Mountains, holds the distinction of being the most visited national park in the United States. Within this vast expanse of natural beauty lies the picturesque Cades Cove, a popular destination for both locals and tourists alike. Visitors often flock to the area to take in the breathtaking 11-mile loop road, which winds through the lush foliage and offers glimpses of the park's diverse wildlife. Along the way, travelers can also discover historic structures and snap photos of the stunning seasonal scenery, especially in the fall and spring. For those looking to extend their stay, the Cades Cove Campground offers the perfect retreat, complete with numerous hiking and biking trails that allow visitors to truly immerse themselves in the unparalleled beauty of the park. Cades Cove is a popular destination in the Smoky Mountains, attracting visitors who are interested in catching a glimpse of the area's diverse wildlife. Whether you prefer to drive through or camp in the area, Cades Cove offers ample opportunities to observe a variety of creatures. While deer and black bears are commonly sighted, visitors may also encounter coyotes, groundhogs, turkeys, raccoons, and other fascinating species. For many families, including the Martin family from Knoxville, Tennessee, Cades Cove holds a special place in their hearts. For generations, the Martins have made an annual Father's Day weekend pilgrimage to the Smokies, specifically to camp and hike in Cades Cove. Their love for this beautiful area and the many unique experiences it offers continues to draw them back year after year. William Martin, along with his two sons, Douglas aged 9, and Dennis aged 6, embarked on a Father's Day weekend adventure on June 13, 1969. Accompanying them on the trip was William's father, Clyde. This was to be Dennis's first such adventure with his father, and the group planned to hike a 13-mile loop trail from Russell to Spence Field in Cades Cove. Both William and Clyde were experienced hikers, having taken this same route multiple times in the past. Douglas, who was only 9 years old, had also hiked the trail before, so he was familiar with the terrain. Although Dennis was only 6 years old, he had been on family hikes before and was able to keep up with the pace of the group. Their journey began in Cades Cove, where they set off on the trail that led them through Abrams Creek and past the junction of the Crib Gap Trail. As they continued on, they eventually arrived at Russell Field, where they were able to take in the breathtaking scenery and enjoy the wilderness. Upon reaching Russell Field on the evening of June 13th, the Martin family met up with Dr. Carter Martin, a family friend from Huntsville, Alabama, along with his two sons. It's important to note that despite sharing the same last name, there was no familial relation between the two Martin groups. The next morning, On June 14th, the group set out on a 90-minute hike along the Appalachian Trail towards Spence Field. This location was known for its stunning view of Mountain Laurel in full bloom during the month of June. Upon arriving at Spence Field, they were greeted by other members of the family who had also made the trek. After enjoying a late lunch, the Martin children, along with Dr. Martin's children, began to play together. During this time, Dennis's father, William, overheard a conversation between the boys as they huddled up and plotted a little scheme. They discussed the idea of running to the edge of the field, sneaking around, and carrying out a surprise attack to scare the adults. To make the plan more effective, they instructed Dennis to walk alone and stay away from them since he was wearing a bright red t-shirt that might spoil the surprise. William observed the boys joking and laughing together as they schemed their sneak attack. After lunch, 9-year-old Douglas Martin teamed up with Dr. Martin's sons and headed out in one direction, while 6-year-old Dennis headed off in another direction all alone, still wearing his bright red t-shirt. William Martin, Dennis's father, watched for a few minutes as his son walked away before turning his attention back to the rest of the group. A few minutes later, when the children jumped out to scare the grown-ups, no one immediately realized that Dennis wasn't with them. William had assumed that Dennis would catch up with the others and didn't worry too much at first. However, less than 5 minutes had passed before William realized that something was wrong. The family split up and began calling out for Dennis, but there was no answer. William began to feel a growing sense of panic as he and the others searched the area. Despite their efforts, they were unable to locate the little boy. Dennis's father, William Martin, was extremely worried as Dennis was a quiet child who always responded when someone called his name. In an attempt to locate his son, William decided to head in one direction while his father, Clyde, went in the opposite direction. William followed the nearby Appalachian Trail heading west, repeatedly calling out for Dennis as he walked. He covered a 1-mile stretch before turning around and heading back towards Russell Field. He then retraced his steps, hiking all the way back to Spence Field, thinking that Dennis might have gotten confused and followed the same path that they had taken earlier in the day. Despite his efforts, there was still no sign of Dennis. William eventually returned to Spence Field alone, feeling exhausted and defeated. This was 1969, a time when there were no cell phones or quick ways to call for help. Dennis's grandfather, Clyde, realized that they needed assistance and decided to hike to the nearest ranger station at Cades Cove, which was approximately 9 miles away. It took Clyde several hours to reach the ranger station, and by the time he got there, it was already 8:30 p.m. He reported Dennis missing to the rangers, who immediately launched a search and rescue operation. Just as the search for Dennis began, a storm rolled in, further complicating the already challenging task of finding the young boy. The area where Dennis was last seen was known for its complex terrain and potentially dangerous wildlife, and with the added obstacle of heavy rain, the situation became even more daunting. Despite the challenges, a few rangers immediately began searching the immediate area around Spence Field where Dennis had last been seen. They notified dispatch that they planned to search through the night in the hope of finding the missing boy. In 1969, there was no established large-scale search and rescue operation plan in place for the Smoky Mountains National Park. Chief Ranger Sneddon organized a search crew that set up a headquarters camp in Spence Field, where they could plan their efforts to find Dennis. The search crew would begin their search early on the morning of June 15th, hoping to make progress in their quest to find the missing boy. Initially, the search crew for Dennis Martin consisted of 30 men with 5 leaders and 10 additional crews of 2 to 4 men. However, as the search continued, more volunteers arrived on site to join in the effort. By 1 p.m. on June 15th, the search party had grown to 240 people, but there was no clear leadership or coordination among them. As the days went by, more and more people joined in the search for Dennis, including Boy Scouts and rescue squads from the North Carolina side of the Smokies who brought in jeeps, trucks, and helicopters to aid in the search efforts. Eventually, more than 1,400 people would take part in the search. However, the large number of search teams and volunteers may have actually hindered the search. There was no established search and rescue operation plan for the park at the time, and the search lacked a clear chain of command. As a result, searchers were likely destroying evidence or any clues that could lead them to Dennis Martin. Despite the growing number of people involved in the search, Dennis remained missing. As the search for Dennis Martin continued, many different ideas and theories were put forward about what could have happened to him. Some of these came from psychics and fortune tellers who had contacted the authorities offering to help. One psychic from Los Angeles claimed to have seen the boy 2.5 miles to the left of where he had last been seen by his father or brother. According to this psychic, Dennis had fallen off a steep area and was now stuck in the bushes, but still alive. Another psychic from New Orleans suggested that the search should stop looking on the ground and start looking up in the trees and treetops to find Dennis. These were just a couple of examples of dozens of calls that the search team received from psychics who claimed they had information that could lead to Dennis. Despite the search leaders following up on every call, they all turned out to be dead ends. After a week of unsuccessful searching, the FBI was called in to investigate whether there was any indication of foul play or a potential kidnapping. The FBI will get involved in a missing persons case if there is a suspicion of a crime. FBI agent Jim Ride was assigned to look into the background of the Martin family to see if anyone could have had a motive to harm or abduct young Dennis. After thorough investigation, the FBI found no evidence of any enemies or suspicious individuals connected to the Martins. The lack of any solid leads prompted the FBI and the Martins to refocus their search efforts back in the Smoky Mountains. The Martin family cooperated with the authorities and tried to recall every detail they could remember from the time they arrived at the Great Smoky Mountains National Park until the last moment when William saw Dennis walking away from the group. They recounted everything that had happened during the initial search for Dennis, in the hours before Clyde Martin reached the ranger station. Dennis went missing around 4 p.m., and it took Clyde until 8:30 p.m. to get to the ranger station, which gave them a 4.5-hour window. The family searched the immediate area and enlisted the help of anyone around Spence Field who offered to assist in finding Dennis. The family went through each detail again with the FBI when they arrived to investigate whether Dennis's disappearance was a kidnapping. The FBI interviewed friends, family, and acquaintances but didn't find any enemies or people connected to the family who seemed suspicious enough to investigate further. So, they went back to the Smokies to continue the search for Dennis. The Martins raised some red flags and alerted authorities to investigate potential leads. One such lead was an unnamed man from Dandridge, Tennessee, who had been camping at Spence Field around the time of Dennis's disappearance. William Martin, Dennis's father, reported to park rangers that this man, referred to as Mr. Cooper, seemed to stick close to William during most of the search efforts. Adding to the mysterious circumstances was the emergence of an unknown woman who claimed to possess extrasensory perception. She reached out to the police department and requested to speak with Dennis's mother. After speaking with the woman, Mrs. Martin was instructed to be wary of Mr. Cooper from Dandridge. Concerned that the woman and Mr. Cooper may be working together to abduct Dennis, Mrs. Martin brought up the possibility to the police. Despite the potential lead, there is no public record indicating that authorities found the situation suspicious enough to launch a further investigation. Nevertheless, the Martins noted these strange occurrences and felt that they warranted attention. As the search for their missing son, Dennis, continued, the Martins grew increasingly desperate for any explanation that could offer hope for his safe return. They considered every possible scenario that could have led to Dennis's disappearance, including the idea that someone may have confused their family with another, but there is no publicly available evidence to suggest that this theory held any weight. Contained within the files that are public and related to the investigation into Dennis's disappearance are several intriguing leads and witness statements, among which is the account of a man named Harold Key. From Carthage, Tennessee, Harold and his family were present in the park on the day Dennis went missing. Specifically, they were in the C Branch area, located roughly 7 miles from Spence Field and near Rowan's Creek. According to Key, he heard a disturbing scream that afternoon, which prompted him and his wife to scan their surroundings, fearing that one of their children may be under attack by a bear. Shortly thereafter, Key spotted a suspicious-looking man moving swiftly through the nearby woods. Key recalls that the man appeared to be intentionally avoiding them, and he described the man as rough in appearance. Several days after Harold Key and his family were in the park, they returned home and learned of Dennis Martin's disappearance through news reports. Key immediately reported his account of the sickening scream and the rough-looking man he saw to park officials. However, after investigating the matter, park officials determined that Rowan's Creek was too far from Spence Field for the incidents to be related. Unfortunately, the available information on the investigation into Dennis's disappearance ends there. Although the FBI continued to collaborate with park officials throughout the search, the contents of their report remain a mystery. This lack of transparency has frustrated many who have attempted to obtain the official report through Freedom of Information requests. The search for Dennis continued for 7 agonizing days, and on June 20th, which was also Dennis's 7th birthday, park ranger records show plans were made for how to proceed if he was not found alive. The following day, with over 1,400 volunteers participating in the search, concerns arose that uncoordinated efforts could be doing more harm than good. As a result, park officials requested that volunteers stop joining the search, which had by that point covered over 56 square miles. As the search for Dennis Martin stretched on, the costs continued to pile up. Despite the massive effort from volunteers and law enforcement, the hope of finding Dennis alive began to dwindle. On Wednesday, June 25th, park officials announced that the search for Dennis would be coming to an end soon. For the Martin family, the news was devastating. After almost 2 weeks of camping out and searching tirelessly for their son, they had to pack up and head back to Knoxville with heavy hearts. The uncertainty surrounding Dennis's disappearance and the lack of answers only added to their anguish. As the search for Dennis Martin dragged on without any solid leads, the National Park Rangers made the difficult decision to suspend all major search operations on Sunday, June 29th. Despite their best efforts, they had come up empty-handed and the FBI had found no evidence to support theories of Dennis being kidnapped. In the weeks that followed, the Martin family continued to hold out hope for any information that could lead to their son's safe return. They raised a reward of $5,000, equivalent to about $40,000 today, for anyone who could provide credible information about Dennis's whereabouts. However, as time passed and the search efforts turned up nothing new, the park officials had to make the tough call to officially close the search for Dennis Martin on September 11, 1969. The Martin family was left with no answers and the haunting memory of their son's disappearance in the Great Smoky Mountains. The disappearance of Dennis Martin has remained a mystery for over half a century, with no definitive answers as to what happened to the young boy. Various theories have been put forward, including the possibility that he became lost in the rugged terrain and perished due to the elements or being attacked by wildlife. Over the years, there have been several tips and leads that have emerged. One notable tip came in 1985 when a group of illegal ginseng hunters stumbled upon what appeared to be the remains of a small boy in an area about 3 miles from Spence Field, where Dennis was last seen alive. The hunters found a skull and other remains, but fearing arrest, almost 2 decades passed before one of the men called in the tip. When a search team finally looked for the remains, they came up empty-handed, as too much time had passed. According to a report by park officials, the search for Dennis was a marked failure. Despite the presence of many people on the scene, any possible evidence that could have been preserved was likely trampled upon by the numerous individuals who came to offer their assistance. The failure to properly coordinate and organize the search for Dennis Martin prompted the National Park Service to completely overhaul their search and rescue operations across all national parks. As a result of these changes, agencies all over the United States and the world have also adopted these new protocols, which have ultimately resulted in saving lives. Despite the positive outcomes of these changes, it is heart-wrenching to know that they came too late to rescue Dennis Martin. His disappearance remains an unsolved mystery, and his tragic case has served as a catalyst for reforming search and rescue procedures across the country.